Alrighty, so this is another video tutorial on SKC, the add-on. This one is going to be on loot priority. So if you're just interested in general usage, then there's another video. But if you want to know more in depth how the loot priority system works, this is a good video. So, well, yeah, let's start off with the kind of concept of it. Loot priority is a way to distribute loot kind of beyond just the basic SK system, which is just based on this list. So, for example, if there's an item that both, rogues and warriors want, but you know that it's much better, as a guild, you all agree that it's much better if rogues get it. You could create a loot priority so that rogues would be prioritized over warriors, such that regardless of their SK position, a rogue would get it instead of a warrior. There's a lot of other use cases, but I'll show you how this works. It's fairly flexible system. And even honestly, the SK system having two different lists is kind of a loop prioritization as well. In our guild, we use main SK as kind of the bigger upgrades or rarer items, perhaps, and tier SK is for those tier pieces that drop all the time. So you allow for people to SK without using their main spot to try to help distribute loot as much as possible. But this is about the loot priority specifically. So here you can see that I have 186 items loaded into this loot priority database. And we'll come back to the game in a little bit and see how it looks in game. Well, I guess real quick I'll mention the standard help command. You can see /skp skc lp, and you could shift click an item. In this case, I've got a bunch of gear in there from Molten Core. So for example, I'm sure this guy is in there. We can see that the loot priority loaded in is that it's a main SK. We'll talk about what all these mean. These guys have priority on the item, and all these guys have off spec, and any other spec that's not in here just doesn't even see the item. So let's jump over to the GitHub project. This is the GitHub project for the add-on. It's got a README, which kind of goes over most of the content in these videos in words. There's a description of the loop prioritization system, but we'll just talk about it. Here at the bottom in the appendix, there's the supported spec class combinations, which is useful for the guild leader. I'll talk about that in the guild leader video. But here we're interested in this table. So these are all, this is every priority rank that's in the tool, in the background. So there are 17 ranks. You can see the top ranks are relating to SK position, and these are for mains. So the way you read this is that this is top priority. So if, regardless of SK position, if someone has top priority, they win over someone of lower priority. And you can see there are 5 main spec prios, which are kind of user configurable. And then at the bottom, there's off spec, which is always lower than the main. And then right below that, there's the same thing, but for alts. So main will always have prio over alt if you configure it that, if you choose to use this, using this is configurable. And then there's the roles. So an SK always has prio over a role, and you can see a main spec role always has prio over off spec, and again main always has prio over alt, and then of course last is just passing. So I should mention that within a prio, right, for example, and within the SK, if the only people that SK on it both have prio 3, then SK position matters, and then the winner is determined by the SK list. Otherwise, if they're different priorities, the higher priority always wins. So a good way to understand this is to look at kind of the CSV, or like a spreadsheet version of this. The way that this data is ingested into the add-on is through a CSV, and is in fact this is the database that's loaded in there now. So yeah, we'll talk about this a little bit now and how to fill this out. But just to jump ahead, when you're ready to export it, you can always download CSV and you'll get a CSV version of this, which you can directly copy and paste into the tool. We'll do that at the end. But yeah, so this is how it works. From the GitHub, by the way, there's a file called schema, and then there's a folder loop prio. And in fact, this is the CSV version of what we just saw. So if you want to get started, you could copy this thing, paste it into this guy, use the auto formatting and in Google Sheets and make it look nice, just to make it easy to read. And you could share this with your guild, so everyone knows what the loop prio is if they want to go to that link. By the way, I just hid the paladin stuff because this is playing on a horde server, horde guild. So yeah, the way you read this is any item, right, like this CAG, for example. We have in our guild it prioed to rogues, and in this case I have specified that sword rogues and any rogue. So by the way, okay, so these class specs, these are controlled by your guild leader. Your guild leader in game can assign a class and spec to anybody. So like whatever, Taco Mojo is a resto shaman in this case. And this thing is grayed out for me, but for a guild leader, these are editable. So this is saying that when someone what we're talking about, Viscag, so when a rogue chooses SK for Viscag, if they have the spec any rogue, which is something someone could be assigned, or sword rogue, then they have top prio, as well as DPS warrior, prot warrior, or a dual wield warrior. Whereas a dagger rogue or a two-handed warrior just has an off-spec prio. So if we jump back to this table, we'll see that, of course, in fact, a main spec has prio over the off-spec. So like just to iterate it, if a dagger rogue and a sword rogue were the only two to roll, SK for Viscag when it dropped, then the sword rogue would win it, even if he was below the dagger rogue on the SK list. You'll see all these other blanks. A blank means that that person is not, if a character has this spec and class, they will not see the loot GUI for this item. It just won't show up to them. So this is how you kind of minimize the number of people that need to see stuff, number of people that need to click on stuff. Which means if you totally omit an item from this, you don't put it on here, or I guess even if you put it on here and had all blanks, that item would not show up with a loot GUI. And in fact, what would happen is the master looter would right-click it, and it would immediately be looted by the master looter. So that's a way, also, by the way, to control if you want to really manually hand stuff out, like maybe the bindings or rare items. Just don't put them on the prio, and the master looter will get it right away. Yeah. In this case, I'm using mostly one prio, but valid values here are 1 through 5. So we could do whatever we wanted in terms of 5. And then off spec is effectively 6, but is lower than all these rankings. And then you'll remember this table shows that there's an alt level of prios. So this is managed automatically because, again, the guild master will assign roles to people. So in this case, everyone's a main, but this guy could be an alt, for example. And at the time of loot, it would look at the loot prio doc, see what that class and specs loot prio is for that item, and then adjust it based on the alt main status. So you don't have to worry about alts in this. It's just 1 through 5 or off spec. One other kind of quick shortcut is that for the tier items, it's annoying to type in every single Earth Fury item. So if you just put the name of the armor set, like Bloodfang armor or Night Slayer armor, this will automatically add all of those items individually into the loot prio database within the game, so you just don't have to type them out in the loot doc. You could type them out all if you wanted to have separate prios for them. Yeah, I should go through this. So the SK list column is the SK list, which that item is associated with. So you'll see all the tier items are tier SKs, whereas Deathbringer is a main SK, for example. Reserved means if a alt needs it and has an SK position above a main, then the main character will still win it. Reserved it's reserved for main characters. So this is a way to, if you have a older content where alts are still there, but you want to make sure that mains are getting those good items like Deathbringer, for example, you'll you'll reserve it potentially. Disenchant means that if everyone passes or no one needs it, then that item will be disenchanted and it will go to the guild disenchanter, which again, in game, there's a guild role, which will be disenchanter or banker. So the guild leader can assign people those roles, and this item in that case would go directly to that person in the event that everyone passed. Open role is a way to enable the role option for players. If it's true, then that third icon will pop up. There will be the option to SK, roll, or pass. Excuse me. And yeah, if you don't want people to be able to roll on the item, then you can choose false here to disable that. Again, rolling is always lower priority than SKing, and mains have priority over alts if it's reserved, and then main spec over off spec. So if someone, let's say for example on Deathbringer, if an enhancement shaman, in this case wants to roll on it, and so does an elemental shaman, regardless of the elemental shaman roll, the enhancement shaman will win because they have higher prio over that elemental shaman. I think that's all the prio levels. That's how you would fill this out. Yeah, again, you'll note I've just done a bunch of like conditional formatting here to make it look more readable to understand what's going on. But again, all of these items are observable in game. If you do that /SKC LP and then the link of the item name, you'll get to see what you'll print out that loot prio. So we'll just do this real quick. We'll do a CSV download. Pop this guy open real quick. I just copied that thing. Oh, you know what? So interestingly, yeah, only the guild leader is able to import loot prios, right? So in fact, in the guild leader video, I'll show you how to import this, but actually this character is not able to. You'll see that just in the slash commands that for if you're a guild leader or master looter, you'll see more slash commands here, but we know this guy is just a lowly peon. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. Yeah. Thanks, and check out the other videos if you're interested in what the guild leader or the master looter has the options to do. Thanks, bye.